Hi, everybody. I'm Brad Davis. I'm the principal timpanist of the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra here in Honolulu, Hawaii. I'm originally from Henderson, Kentucky. I was the All-State timpanist in 2007 and 2010, so I've been through this process a few times, and I'm really happy to be bringing you guys this video. I hope it's able to help you just a little bit with this just absolute beast of a timpani etude. Hope you guys enjoy. Okay, so there are just a few things I want to talk through on this etude, just a few tips to help you guys prepare as well as you can. And the first thing I want to talk about is sound. Now, sound concept is something that we don't typically talk a lot about as percussionists, especially younger percussionists, high school or below. It's something that we get really focused on technique and the mechanics of what we're doing, but sometimes we don't think as much about the sound we're producing and how the sound comes from the technique, right, and not the other way around. So it's really important, especially on timpani, to be super just hyper focused on the sound you're making. You want a really warm, beautiful, round sound for your general timpani tone. And in an audition setting, you want to sell the judges on the best possible timpani sound you can. There are a lot of different ways you can do that. I'm sure your teachers all have different versions of timpani technique that they've worked with you on. And if you look around the world, there are timpanists who get amazing sounds doing completely different techniques. The one consistent thing I think is that everybody is pretty much focused on harnessing the natural rebound of the drum in some way. Some players throw the stick down and let the drum throw the stick back up and just use the complete natural rebound. Some players assist the rebound a little bit more and then you kind of pull the stick up a little bit faster than the natural rebound, but while still harnessing what the drum's giving you. And that's kind of what I do. But there are a lot of different ways to do it. Um, you just have to be really aware of the sound that the drum is giving back to you. If you're playing a lot of downstrokes, probably it's not going to be the prettiest timpani sound you can get. Um, just something to be aware of. Just use your ears and ask yourself, is this the sound that I want? And if it's not, tweak your technique in different ways to figure out how to fix it. Generally, lifting off the drum in some sort of way is going to make a better sound than playing into the drum. Now, since this is a recorded audition, your sound quality is in a lot of ways going to be dependent on how you record. It's going to be really important that you try out a lot of different things, a lot of different, whether it's a phone or a microphone or cameras or whatever you have on hand. It's really important that you try everything and try it at different distances, different heights, and see what gets you the best timpani sound. If you have access to decent microphones through your school or through someone else in the community, that can be really helpful. My ideal timpani recording situation is to have a couple of microphones, one here, each one up about 6 feet above the drums and pointing down. I think that's your ideal. You could also have one single microphone, maybe 10 or 12 feet in the distance, still high up on a mic stand if you can. But if you don't have access to good microphones, that's okay. You can get a pretty decent recording quality with, a phone or a camera if you just put it in the right place and just experiment constantly. Now, another thing with this, it's really important that you're recording yourself every day when you're practicing. You're not just waiting until the day when you have to go in and record your audition tape. You're recording and you're listening to your practice. This is important even when you're not doing a virtual audition tape. It's important that you're constantly getting feedback on how you sound, and then you're able to fix things. And it's still important to have a teacher, but in this ways you can be your own teacher for some of the simple things and some of the easy fixes, right? So record yourself constantly, and in those recordings, experiment and try and get the best possible sound so that when it comes time to record your audition tape, it's easy. You've already done it. Going along with the sound, a lot of that is going to come down to the mallet you choose. You can see here I have a lot of different options. There are way more than this that would work for this etude. This is one that you could go in a few different directions. You could go with something really articulate, really hard stick with like a thin covering, or you can go something a little bit softer. My general idea on this is to go as soft as I can while still getting the articulation to come through on the fastest stuff. So if you look at this etude, the fastest part is probably around measures 30 to 32 with those crazy sextuplets. So I want to choose a mallet that makes that speak clearly, but that also sounds really nice at the beginning stuff that doesn't need so much articulation. So here I have a few different things. This is what I used. This is a custom mallet made by Jeff Luft, which is basically a small felt core with a tight German felt wrap. Some other things here I have, this is a Freer Percussion Cloyd Duff 2 on carbon fiber, a couple of innovative percussion Javon Gilliam sticks. These are great sticks and they're affordable. So here I have the JMG 4 and the JMG 3. Both of these would be great. Even the 2 would be great for this etude. This is the Grover John Tafoya mallets with this black felt. Those are really good and really affordable. I also have some older Cloyd Duff 1s that you can sometimes find used on Facebook or different places, and some JG Percussion David Herbert 2s with German felt. Those also come in American felt. Either one of those mallets would be great for this. So, just use your ears, come up with something, the sound that you want, and the mallet's out there for you. If you're limited in what you have, what your school has, or what you own, and you're not able to buy anything else, that's fine. I would just defer to articulation over something softer. So what I mean by that is if you have like a general mallet, something like the Vic Firth General Timpani mallet, and you have say you had like the Vic Firth Ultra Staccato mallet. If you have something that's too soft and something that's maybe a little bit too hard, I would go with the too hard mallet, because you definitely need these rhythms to speak, right? But if you have the option, try and find something that splits it down the middle. Another important thing I want to talk about is intonation. And with this etude, intonation is just huge. It's so important, it's so challenging. There are so many pitch changes throughout this whole thing, and it's really hard to get all of those right. This is a virtual audition, so you're lucky that you get to actually set your own gauges and make sure those are right before you go in and before you record. And I would be really careful with how you set those. I would use a tuner, but I wouldn't use it in a way that the tuner is listening to the drums. I would use a tuner to give you the notes so that you then use your ears and match the drum to the tuner and then set the gauge tab. When you have a tuner listen to the drums, it gets really confused with the overtones. And in my experience, that's the case with basically every tuner on the market. So it's better to use the tuner just to give you the different notes and to make sure with your ears that they're right on the gauges. If your school's drums don't have gauges, there are ways to make those online. You can search and find, homemade timpani gauges. You'll find a bunch of different articles and videos telling you how to do that. But I think it's really important for this one that you have some sort of timpani gauge. Just because you're constantly changing pitches while you're playing, you really have to rely on the gauge to get you there for the first entrance on whatever new note it is. Once you have the note, you can adjust, but that first step, you really need the gauges. The second thing is, in your practice, really work to memorize what a half step and a whole step feels like on the pedals. That's going to be really similar no matter what drums you're playing on. It's easy to visualize like this. Like a half step is something like this, and a whole step is something like this, right? And you just need to memorize exactly what your foot's doing for each one of those. So most of the changes you're doing in here, and all of the on-the-fly changes where you have to play in tune at the same time, all of those are half steps or whole steps. Another important part about this is the choreography, where your feet are going, where your body's going, all of that stuff. This is a hard etude. You're tuning a lot of these pitches while you're playing other things. So I might be, there's one situation where I'm playing on these three drums and I'm tuning an F up here. That comes at the bottom of the first page, right? A lot of that stuff. So it's really important that you do the choreography the same every time. You plan out exactly how you want to do it. You mark it in your part. The ways that I like to mark it, sometimes I'll write foot 32 if that's something that I need, or I'll draw 4 circles and put a line where my foot should be, where my 2 feet should be. You need to mark that in, and you need to be ready and practicing all of that specifically so that it's the same every time. If you're not consistent, it's not going to be there in the moment when you're nervous. So the choreography is just as important as any of the other stuff, especially in this etude. So for the end, what I like to do is a 2-step process. So at measure 36, I like to tune the E down to a D. You don't have much time to do that because you have to get your right foot up here to the 23 edge for measure 37 to 38, where you're tuning that G to an A, right? So what I find is normally in measure 36, I don't quite get it. One really important thing is that you're coming down below these pitches whenever you can, and then coming back up to them. The drums are just more stable that way. So in general, if you're tuning a pitch, try and go underneath it and back. Right, so I don't really have time to do that in measure 36 most of the time. So what I do is I get as close as I can, but I definitely bring it down below. And then in measure 38 and 39, while I'm playing up here, I'm able to adjust the D to get it where it needs to be. The other thing is, at measure 40 and 41, you're gonna need to tune this A down to up to a B flat, right? And that's pretty much an on-the-fly tuning adjustment. So it's hard to get that perfectly right the first time. So in the moment, when you're practicing this, if it's wrong, when you get to 41, if it's a little off, don't stop. What you really need to be practicing is from 42 to the end, getting things fixed as soon as possible, right? So if by measure 45 everything's good, that's pretty impressive, and that's going to be better than a lot of your competition. So really work on identifying the problem. Did I tune it sharp? Did I tune it flat? What do I need to do to fix it? And then fixing it as quickly as possible. That's going to be really important. The last thing I want to talk about with this one is just making sure your time and rhythm is as solid as possible. That's something that, you know, the judges are going to be really focused on, and that you need to be really focused on to make sure that that's not in question. So practice this thing with a metronome, and practice it with a metronome in different ways, right? You want to make sure you're nailing the tempos, but also you want to make sure that you're getting the rhythms not compressed in any way. You want to make sure that they're all speaking exactly the way that they're written. So use your metronome in different ways. Use it on quick notes, use it on 16th notes or 32nd notes. Put the metronome on those faster notes, and that's really helping you to check your rhythm, checking the space between the big beats, right? And then to check your time, put the metronome on slower and slower increments. So you might have the metronome on once every 2 beats or once every measure, right? And all of the metronome apps can do this. It's really a useful thing. You should try it. So that way, when you're doing that, you're not relying on the metronome for your time. You're testing your own internal time and seeing if it matches up with the metronome. Hope you all enjoyed this video. Hopefully it helps with your preparations going forward for this audition. Best of luck to everybody.